Hi, I'm Dr. Janice Morrow. Thanks for joining us for another episode of American Mood Swings, where we talk about the brain and all things related to mental health. Welcome. Hi, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about Clubhouse International. Back in 1948, there was a psychiatrist named Dr. Hiram Johnson, who worked at Rockland State Hospital in New York. And he was horrified. It was basically a psychiatric institution. And he was horrified at the way patients were treated, like prisoners versus patients. They were completely isolated. And he strongly felt that isolation creates depression, which contributes towards bad decision making and exacerbates those with mental illness. So he founded something called the Fountain House back in 1948, and it was to foster patients being treated with dignity and respect. The Clubhouse model is a psychosocial rehabilitation, rights-based, and recovery-focused approach. All right, thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of American Mood Swings. Today we have Jack Yatsko from Clubhouse International, who's going to explain this burgeoning organization, Clubhouse International, and how it's grown how he's helped to grow the movement from the founding Clubhouse, a Fountain House in New York, to over 350 clubhouses now in 34 countries. So thank you so much, Jack, for joining us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Janice. Excited to be on this podcast with you today.
So we're going to talk about Clubhouse International, and you are the Chief Operating Officer for Clubhouse International on the island of Kauai. So we want to just get an overview of what Clubhouse is all about. I had never heard of it. My partner who created this show has been an active member in Clubhouse in Park City, Utah, and he's mentioned this numerous times. And finally, I just didn't know much about it. He would talk about it, but I read Dr. Ken Duckworth's book last year called You Are Not Alone. And he mentions Clubhouse in the book, and then I got more intrigued. And so, yeah, let's just how about giving us a general overview of Clubhouse International and how you got involved and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So Clubhouse International is the coordinating center for about 350 clubhouse programs in 34 countries. Clubhouses are community resource centers for adults who have experienced a mental illness. They don't live at these places, but they come there during the day. So our role at Clubhouse International, the things that we coordinate is training, accreditation. We get involved with a lot of advocacy work, public awareness. We have a research arm. We help develop and expand our network. We run a training to help clubhouses get started. And we provide a lot of technical assistance to our member clubhouses, meaning these 350 clubhouses that are located across these 34 countries are affiliate like chapters of Clubhouse International. They pay membership dues to our organization. We provide a lot of supports to them. And we run this quality assurance process called accreditation. All these clubhouses follow what we call the international standards for clubhouse programs, which are 37 standards in 8 different categories that provide kind of the framework and the philosophical beliefs behind the clubhouse model. You had mentioned Fountain House. Fountain House back in 1948, that's how old the model is. It's over 70 years old now, was the very first clubhouse in New York City years ago. Fountain House for years were the only one of its kind, providing these supports that helped adults who were otherwise in and out of psychiatric hospitalizations, getting supports in the hospital, but discharged back into their communities with no supports. And so what eventually evolved was with Fountain House developing its first clubhouse, and you gave that introduction of how it evolved. They were the only ones operating like its kind for a while, but then other people caught the interest and saw that this community resource center, this coming together of people building relationships, providing community, really helped keep people out of the hospital. It gave them meaning, it gave them hope, it gave them purpose to gather together, to do meaningful work together, to carry out whatever the functions of the clubhouse were, such as making lunch together, helping somebody get a job for the first time. And so over the course of the years, the model started to grow and grow. And I'm going to fast forward to 1994 because our organization is coming up on its 30-year anniversary next year. The network of clubhouses was growing, but there was a need to have kind of an international sort of organization that could coordinate all these areas. So instead of having different clubhouses doing different things, or Fountain House trying to be all things to all people, there was a need to expand training bases, which they did over the years, and expand a peer review process. So we feel strongly that if a clubhouse is taking money to be a clubhouse, family members, funding sources need to know a way of knowing that you're doing what you said you would do with the money that they're giving you. And so our quality assurance process helps do that. So right now, at Clubhouse International, we have 12 international training centers. We do a lot of technical support of our existing clubhouses. And it's really, to me, the reason why this model works in so many different countries is it really treats the human condition across cultures of needing meaning and purpose in our lives. Whether you're in Ghana, West Africa, whether you're in Brisbane, Australia, and you have a mental illness, clubhouses provide a reason to get up in the morning, something to look forward to, something where you have hope and purpose in your life. And I have found that to be a key ingredient. What happens in clubhouses and the relationships that develop between members and staff, and the sense of community, or really like a second family for many of our members, is really the bridge. So even though there's different cultures here in Hawaii and Pennsylvania and Moscow and Denmark, wherever we have clubhouses, that thread of being needed, wanted, valued, and having something to contribute, and knowing that you count and you have people expect you and they want your contributions, and we rely on the talent, skills, and abilities of our members to carry out the functions of the clubhouse, are cross-cultural. And that meets that human condition of being needed, wanted, and valued. And so I think, to me, that's a common thread of any clubhouse, no matter where you go. I'll get in further to what exactly happens in a clubhouse, what our milieu is, but I think that, in an overarching sense, kind of speaks to a place where you're like, you think of churches, you think of Boys and Girls Clubs, you think of Rotary clubs. All those places have a sense of purpose and community, and clubhouses provide a sense of community. So no matter what kind of mental illness you have, we're not going to talk about all the aspects of your symptomatology and your medications at the clubhouse. We're going to talk about you and what you want to do in your life. What are your goals? What really motivates you to think about, do I want to get a job? Do I want to come out of the isolation and make friends? Do I want to go back to school? It's really a holistic model that treats people with dignity and respect. And I've been to probably 210 clubhouses. I just was counting them the other day. And I meet so many members, and we call the folks that come to the clubhouse members, not patients or clients, because they're members of a community, and we try to declinicalize that. So membership invokes being empowered, invokes community. But the members that I've met so many times say over and over again, my clubhouse not only changed my life, it saved my life. And we take those words very seriously in our day-to-day work at Clubhouse International, and in our clubhouses across the globe, and making sure every day matters for somebody who comes through the doors of a clubhouse, and that they're going to be greeted and treated with dignity and respect, and offered an array of opportunities to engage in whatever their individual goals are, to recapture their lives and return to society.
It's really beautiful model. Rick, my partner for the show, he definitely said he felt strongly Clubhouse saved him through COVID. That community and support. He was very isolated there in Utah and out of work, and was very lonely. And as we saw, a lot of suicide increased. But it's just a beautiful model. Thank you for explaining the overview, giving us an overview. So how did you get involved with Clubhouse International? Like, what was your background? I'm just curious.
My own background I worked in mental health as a case manager. I have mental illness in my family. My mom had a mental illness, and this is back when they called them nerve pills. Even today, the myths and all the things about mental illness, you couldn't call it a anti-anxiety medication. It was a nerve pill.
I
But
didn't know.
I've always when I worked as a case manager for a while, when we moved to Kauai, they're opening up the first clubhouse. This is back in the 80s when we moved out here, so 35 some years ago. And I really, when they were just opening the doors, and I got hired as one of the staff workers there, and learned about the work order day, learned about helping people to reduce that isolation that you mentioned about Rick. Clubhouse has really helped people come out from the shadows, so to speak. I mean, it's no wonder to me with the myths surrounding mental illness, the violence myth. I could tell you statistically, you know this, Janice, people with mental illness are more statistically going to be victims of crime than perpetrators of crime. Our folks kind of live in the shadows a little bit because of the myths associated with mental illness, and clubhouses provide a bridge to come out and be a part of society again through these other arrays of support. So when a person, so my background was getting hired by a clubhouse back in the late 80s called Friendship House here on the island of Kauai. I worked there 13 years, eventually became the director, got on the faculty of Clubhouse International, and began to do quality assurance visits of clubhouses. But I was hired in 2001, 2002, so 21 years ago, by Clubhouse International. So I've been in this clubhouse field of work for 35 years now, and I've worked previously for a few years as a case manager. And I continue to feel like people with mental illness are marginalized, stigmatized unfairly, and clubhouses help level the playing field. I like to say it that way, as far as providing opportunities for people to get their lives back. People with mental illness, there's this misnomer that they have these special needs, and all the people that I know that have a mental illness are human beings first and foremost, and they have the same needs as anybody else. They want a decent place to live, they want friends, they want some money in their pocket, and they want to be treated as citizens, as contributing people with skills, talents, and abilities to offer. And that's not any different than most people that just go through their lives getting a degree, getting a job, raising a family. Folks with mental illness want the same sorts of things. And so clubhouses really help people who've experienced a mental illness, whether it be schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar, major depression, a range of any kind of mental illness are folks that are eligible to come to clubhouses. And they find that support there. They find that their opinion matters, and that there's a belief in them from other folks that gives people the confidence to think about, maybe I want to go to work again. Maybe I want to go back to school. Maybe I want to move out of a board and care home and get my own apartment. Clubhouses really reach a variety of types of people. We have folks who've had 20 to 30 psychiatric hospitalizations and really need a lot of supports. And we have folks who have master's degrees, PhDs, who've had something traumatic happen in their lives, and they've kind of fallen off their path, so to speak, and they go to a clubhouse and they kind of get a booster shot of people believing in them, being around a high energized environment and making friends and feeling like, I am ready to get back out there. And they'll use the clubhouse as a springboard to go back into their careers or do whatever their individual goals are. So I really feel honored and kind of blessed to be in a field and in a model. A psychosocial rehabilitation is what clubhouses operate from. But this model is really members and staff working side by side. Our milieu, if you will, you would ask me to kind of be prepared to talk about, like, well, what exactly happens in these clubhouses?
Yeah, we can kind of segue there. Like, how does it work? Does someone just walk in the door? How old do you have to be, and does it cost people money? Or I understand services are free, but and then yeah, I'd love to hear about all the different programs, or some, if there's too many to talk about, just pick the big ones and what you have to offer.
Clubhouses are open to adults 18 years or older who have a mental illness. Some have some transitional youth sorts of programs, but by and large, most of our clubhouses serve adults 18 years or older who have a mental illness. What happens at a clubhouse is usually somebody is referred to the clubhouse by a provider, a mental health center, a private psychiatrist, a case manager, a therapist, and they'll fill out a referral form that they send to the clubhouse saying, Janice is looking to just make some friends, go back to school or work, and we're referring her for these reasons. We don't require 15 pages of mountains of every single psychosocial assessment that Janice has had. We're looking for somebody who that wants to join a community of like-minded people. There's no kind of Roman Coliseum thing, like if you were to come for a tour of a clubhouse and check it out. After you leave, the clubhouse isn't going to judge and evaluate you and say, does she fit in here? Is she a good match for our community? It's really on the onus of the clubhouse to make it as an attractive place that you feel like this place is cool. They treat people the right way here, and I'd like to check it out further. So it's not a judging of anybody, unless somebody presents themselves as threatening or something like that, which is a very rare occurrence. You're going to be welcomed, and you're going to be welcome to join the community, not have to complete 40 hours of let's see how you do in our milieu and all that. It's a welcoming, dignified environment of people who've had similar experiences and who help support each other. So the way that a clubhouse works is we have what we call a work order day, and that's kind of our therapeutic milieu, if you will. So rather than a lot of day treatment programs that run classes and say staff run like a social skills class or a budgeting class or things like that, or role play out scenarios to help people, build their competence or build their skills. We have what we call this work order day, where we have work units. And so a group of people will be involved with, say, making lunch, where their members can come to the clubhouse for as long as they want. They're free to come and go as many days of the week and as long as they want. But most people will come for 4 or 5 hours of the whole day. We get hungry during the day. So in one of the work units, they'll call it a food service or culinary unit. They're involved with menu planning, shopping, preparing, cleaning up afterwards, all the things associated with meal preparation. Other folks will be involved with what we call a clerical unit. So they might be working on the Clubhouse newsletter, the webpage, the TikTok, Instagram, sorts of social media things. They might be reaching out to people who members who didn't come in for the day or are in the hospital, arranging to do visits to them. Working on the Clubhouse newsletter, organizing the social program. Clubhouses are open on evenings, weekends, and holidays. Not every single weekend. Most clubhouses are open a couple Saturdays a month. They're open on all the major holidays, which is another cool thing, because oftentimes those are the loneliest times for people who don't otherwise have family. Well, at one of our clubhouses, they're going to be open on Christmas Day. They're going to be open on Thanksgiving. They're going to be open on the major holidays in different countries that they celebrate. And so in these units, there's usually, Clubhouse might have 2 or 3 of these units. They'll be helping people with their educational supports, their employment goals. They're helping to build their confidence. So it isn't like we're not going to administer a vocational assessment and give you a score on your vocational assessment. If you come to us and say, I haven't worked, I really want to get a job, I need to get a paycheck, we're going to talk about, what do you like to do? What sorts of things are you interested in? And we'll help you develop a resume. We'll help you practice interviewing. We'll look at different ways that we can provide employment supports. But through that work order day, you get to know members. You get to make friendships, build relationships, learn skills, and work side by side with other folks. And the clubhouse space in a clubhouse, there's no staff-only space and member-only space. The space is shared. It's a really flat hierarchy. So staff, we call them generalist staff, that are involved with all the work of the clubhouse. They're not wearing keys on their hips. They're not in charge of running the units. Their job is to work side by side and draw on the talent, skills, and abilities of the members to help take on leadership roles, whether it's interviewing and hiring staff, whether it's driving the clubhouse vans, whether it's organizing the evening weekend program, making lunch, updating the employment board. Any of the work of the clubhouse, members are expected to get involved to the degree that they want to be. We have some members that come that just want to, at first, just sort of feel the atmosphere out and see what this place is about.
Yeah, sure.
And then other members get involved to a high degree in all of the work of the clubhouse. But the work order day milieu is a way that we help members to get involved in things that they're interested in and build upon that. The other big piece I've referenced employment, and in our accredited clubhouses, over 40% of the average daily attendance of our membership is employed in jobs in the community, not sheltered workshops, not doing work at the clubhouse and getting paid for it, but out in regular jobs, being paid the same wages and with the same job expectations as other employees of employers in the community. Clubhouses have a 3-tiered employment program system called transitional employment, supported employment, and independent employment. For the purposes of time today, I won't get into all the details of those, but it's really intended to meet people if they want an entry-level job and they haven't worked for a long time, or they've never worked, or somebody who's had a lot of work experience, to help them again get prepared to re-enter the workforce. So employment is a big focus of what we do, as well as helping members if they've dropped out of high school and they want to get their GED, or they've completed high school and never went to college or dropped out of college, helping them navigate financial aid, go to college again, even figuring out the bus to get to and from school. Sometimes that's even figuring out the transfers. Maybe somebody's taking medication and being out in sunlight affects them in a negative way. So getting them umbrella to stand out by the bus stop, or helping, where the bus has a shelter. All those little things that could be potential barriers, clubhouses try to extinguish. We form relationships with disability counselors at the local universities and help be a bridge for a member who has an educational goal that may develop then into a career goal for them. So clubhouses have these really sophisticated ways of helping members with their employment, education, housing goals. Another thing that the clubhouses are doing to a much higher degree is helping members with their wellness. As you know, people with mental illness, mortality rate is 20 to 25 years earlier than somebody without a mental illness. If that was any other disease, it would be front page news. It would be on it would get so much more attention. But because I think of the stigma of mental illness, it doesn't draw the same attention, and that's a real problem. And so clubhouses are really helping members with their wellness, getting to see a doctor, going to see a dentist. The treatment for a lot of people that we work with, for dentists, they don't have a health insurance coverage. Medicaid doesn't provide dental coverage, so their treatment is to pull a tooth. It isn't to be preventive and get regular checkups and help in that regard. So clubhouses do a lot of work to build funds to help members get dental support, to make sure they're seeing a general practitioner to get a checkup like most people do, providing nutritious meals, providing healthy things in the clubhouse. Like they might have bikes, they might have gym memberships, they might have Fitbits. There are an array of wellness supports to help members focus on their health, to live long, healthy lives like anybody else. So we do have standards related to that in those 37 standards. And so when you go to a clubhouse, you can expect a holistic atmosphere that's going to provide you with an array of opportunities, and you can take advantage of those to the degree that you feel comfortable with. No one's forced to come to a clubhouse. It's all volunteer. There's no expectation of you have to be involved with X amount of work units, or you have to do this. It's really to your own individual level of interest and participation that you get involved. For some folks, the work order day may not be like their total cup of tea. I remember one of the members I used to work with, he really didn't want to be in like a group thing in the work order day, but this guy could fix anything. He was like the MacGyver of the Clubhouse, that TV show. And
we all like to know
his thing was,
them.
so this guy, he fixed the bikes, he fixed the broken ice machine, he always repaired the vans, and he also had he was really good at sensing weather patterns. And so he'd be like, no, we're not going to go hiking this Saturday. It's going to be raining on the west side of the island. We should go do this. And he had a kind of a radar that way. And so his name's Bob, and Bob found his role at the clubhouse. He wasn't in there cooking lunch with a bunch of people. He didn't like the noise in the kitchen. He didn't, he interacted better one-to-one than in a group setting. But man, anybody who had anything broken, where's Bob? And Bob found his niche at the clubhouse, and he had a number of bad living situations, and he's been in the same apartment now for like 15 years, hasn't had any hospitalizations. That's another thing that this model really does well, is even if you don't have like a per se interest in the philanthropic kind of stuff that we do. From a cost savings perspective, we have lots of research that shows hospital recidivism, less involvement in the criminal justice system, less involvement in emergency rooms when there's a clubhouse in a community. So when a clubhouse is a community providing these kinds of supports, people have meaning and hope and purpose in their lives, and a community that really cares about them, are going to be part of discharge planning at a hospital, going to be a part of finding out what were the precursors that led to the hospitalization, and really help make a difference. I remember we had a member who had bipolar disorder, and he was also had a substance abuse issue. And so he stopped taking his medication, started drinking, stopped coming to the clubhouse, ended up going in the hospital, and he needed to pay his bills to maintain his apartment. So he allowed us to go into his apartment. This is back when people used checkbooks a lot, and write checks to pay, bring his checkbook to the hospital so he could pay his bills. We worked with the housing provider, and when we went in his apartment, he had only been a member for like 2 months, so he didn't know us well, and we didn't know him well at the time. But there's whiskey bottles all over. There's moldy food. It just was a really bad atmosphere. Well, me and a few members went in and cleaned the apartment. Went to the food bank, got food, replenished his refrigerator. We're part of the discharge planning process. So when this member got discharged from the hospital, he wasn't going back into the same environment that got him in trouble in the first place. We walked in the door, and he literally just started crying and saying, "I can't believe that there's flowers on it." We put flowers on his kitchen table. His whole place was stocked with food. It was clean top to bottom. And the housing providers love us. Who else is going to do that kind of stuff? And so this guy then said, I've only been with you guys a couple months. I don't really know you guys that much. And I said to him, I said, "Chuck," I said, "this is who we are. If you want to connect up with us further and start coming back to the clubhouse on a regular basis, we want to help you. We want to help that you don't get involved in the circumstances that led to you going to the hospital and falling off your treatment plan with trying to stay clean and sober." And so Chuck ended up getting a job, ended up getting involved with the local treatment providers and going to AA and getting supports in that arena. And it really, he was one of those guys who said, "This clubhouse saved my life. I was on a really bad spiraling path, and you guys saved my life with what you guys do." And he made friends, and he had reasons to get up in the morning and not go into the bad habits that previously consumed his life.
Reason to get up in the morning. I'm just blown away. I'm curious how you guys pay for all the is this non-profit, how is it all funded? Because I've heard that the services are free to people, so I don't know if that's accurate, and if it is, then where do you guys get all your money? Is it government or donations? Because these are great programs. I love it all.
So clubhouses are operated one of two ways. They're either their own nonprofit organization with a board of directors like any other nonprofit organization, or they're operated under the umbrella or auspice of a mental health center or some other agency, and they're part of that program. They get their funding through government contracts and support, through Medicaid funding, public and private ways. So the public way is either through Medicaid funding, voc rehab funding, ARPA grants, city, state, county grants. And through the private end of it, they get their money through grants, events, individual donors. And so when we talk to clubhouses in our new clubhouse development training, we talk about how important it is to have multiple pots of money so you're not sole source funded, because the governor might love you now and she may not get reelected, and then the new administration comes in town. If you have 6 or 7 pots of money, the sustainability of the clubhouse is much stronger than one. So members don't individually pay fees to the clubhouse. They'll either if they get Medicaid funding, they'll bill through Medicaid, or they'll just operate through the contracts and supports that financial supports they have through the public and private entities. And so the 99% of our clubhouses, I would say, don't charge any private fees. There's maybe a couple that have a sliding fee scale for if members have the ability to pay, but it's based on a sliding fee scale. For the vast majority, that we don't want that to be a barrier. So clubhouses do a lot of hard work to raise funds so that doesn't become a barrier for members to become a member of a clubhouse. And that's one of our standard number one in those 37 standards is membership is voluntary and without time limits. And I really like that standard because it sounds simple. Membership is voluntary without time limits, but the philosophical underpinnings of that standard invoke that you're in charge. You're going to come and go as you please. No one should mandate your participation. We would hope that the clubhouse would be attractive enough that you want to come, and that's our job to do that. And there's no like, in 90 days, Janice is going to be at this point in her recovery, and then she's out the door. In 180 days, this is where Janice should be. Life doesn't work that way. And so, and then life isn't just a linear path. So the time limit piece of that is totally up to each and every member. Some members come in for a short amount of period and use it as a springboard to get back into their own life. Other members who get jobs might come to the evening weekend program. And for other members, it becomes something that's part and parcel of them, just like the local church is for other people to be a member of, the Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club is as a membership organization for other people, or a Boys and Girls Club is for other people. So a clubhouse is like, just that cool place that I have friends there. It's a fun place for me to hang out. And if I need some extra support, I'm going to get it at this place. These people are non-judgmental, and they provide an atmosphere where I feel I belong and I'm treated with dignity and respect, and I enjoy being a part of that community.
Well, you've mentioned it's one of your goals, and from talking with NAMI, having interviews with them, and Disability Rights California, you've all brought up something that I think is really important, because a traditional model, like for people to get a lot of help, I mean, what's been done in the past is that, like, to get any kind of disability, you have to they have to prove like how they can't work and why they can't work, and it's not very much money. Where all of your organization, NAMI, Disability Rights, they want a completely different approach. Like, what can we do to help you work, because it's such an important part, if you can, and feel like you're contributing. And how can we assist in the tools that you need? Like you just mentioned, self-directed care. What can we do? What are your goals? What would you like to do? And I just love that you're open on the weekends and holidays, because those are the times, holidays especially. It's just off topic a little bit, but like just this last week, we had here in Los Angeles 4 police officers, unrelated, in a 24-hour period, 4 sheriff officers killed themselves, like in the last week, within a 24-hour. And I mean, it's quite shocking. And I don't know what kind of resources they have, but I mean, there could be a slew of factors, but one of it, I mean, they see the worst, their job, sadly, they're seeing the worst of humanity most of the days. But also the holidays are approaching, and we always see, we're going to be talking about that a little bit in the next few weeks, because this is and it's when people, not evenings, weekends, is when you're alone. If you have a job, you're kind of busy or distracted during the week, but Saturday night, you're sitting there by yourself, or like you said, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and when you feel that loneliness compound. So having a place to go and feel needed and loved, like that old show, that sitcom with Cheers. I think that's why it resonated.
Exactly.
Where everybody knows your name.
It's exactly like the Cheers example.
We're all human. So what, I like people, a lot of people are private and want to maintain anonymity. So if they come in and they're talking about things that are private, like I think some people are concerned, is this going to be shared with, like, I don't know, not the police, but can they come in and talk about things openly, or how do you know what I'm saying? Unless they were suicidal. I'd like to just, is there anonymity? Is that what I'm saying?
Yeah, to the degree that members want to, like, say, we always try to encourage members to use their full names in the newsletter, celebrate them getting their paychecks. I mean, our newsletters are chock full of members holding up their paycheck for the first time, and their full name is listed there. But for people who want to come in and have needs to just talk privately about a certain situation, certainly that opportunity is provided to them. We don't dispense medication at the clubhouse. We don't provide treatment per se. It's more the rehab piece that we provide. But certainly, I've been involved in so many situations where crisis erupts or somebody's had something traumatic happening. You really need to talk through with somebody something traumatic that's happened with them, or reach out into their support network of case managers, therapists, whoever those other folks might be, to help them get extra supports if they need that. So yes, that's provided. And if somebody wants to remain anonymous through whatever, like the newsletter, whatever, we certainly respect that. We don't force anybody to do that if they don't want to. But our hope is like that reverse kind of thing, where you're proud to be a member of the Clubhouse. And this is something that we need to do a better job just overall of demystifying mental illness, and so people don't feel ostracized and embarrassed or ashamed, or no one's embarrassed about having diabetes, you know. And so part of our, like our vision is a world where people with mental illness recover and are an integral part of society. And our mission is to try to get more of these clubhouses, these community resources around the world, because every community has these other things we're talking about, well-respected churches, Kiwanis clubs, Lions clubs, all those kinds of things. Every community has people with mental illness, but not every community has a clubhouse. And so our bigger, mission is that, wouldn't it be nice if every community had a clubhouse and everybody knew about that clubhouse? Like in my community, United Way and the neighbors, they know about the clubhouse. They're part of the fabric of the community. They participate in the local charity walks. They participate in other nonprofits, fundraisers, and they're parts of the fabric of the community. And so, no, it's not. The clubhouse isn't something to be afraid of, or to feel like it needs to be off in the corner part of town away from everybody else. They want to be a part of the community. And so I've testified at planning commissions and been a part of a lot of advocacy efforts when we run into NIMBY, that not in my backyard kind of a thing, where we try to demystify the concerns of property values going down if there's a clubhouse, or there'll be less safety in the community. Those are myths. And when there's a clubhouse in the community, property values don't go down, crime rates don't go up. Clubhouses help keep people out of trouble, then reinforce people getting into trouble. And that's where mental health courts are more embracing clubhouses. Police officers, CIT programs, they get to know the clubhouse. We want the police officers to know who we are, where we are in the community. Somebody who goes off their medication and steals a candy bar from 7-Eleven doesn't need... They need treatment and rehab more than need incarceration and that on their record. And so when we're working with mental health courts, we have a number of judges that we have good relationships with that will see that kind of need and partner with their local clubhouse to make a referral and get them involved in those kinds of supports. I mean, it's hard enough getting a job when you have a mental illness. It's harder when you have something on your record to get a job. And that even the employment thing, I mentioned that 40% rate of our average daily attendance. People who have disabilities often think, if I work, I'll lose my benefits. And clubhouses get very sophisticated at knowing about federal incentives that help people make a bridge back to employment. It's a misnomer to think, oh, if I just take any job, I'll lose my SSI, I'll lose my SSDI. I learned a lot of those rules when I was working in Clubhouse, and we do a good job of making sure clubhouses learn those from Social Security. If you're on any SSI, SSDI, food stamps, Medicaid, HUD voucher, okay, if I work at this amount of hours and this amount of wages, how is that going to be affected? What's my trial work period? What are some incentives that will help me make a bridge? So you're not losing your benefits, but if you want to go back to work full-time or part-time, what are the best ways to do that? So we get good at knowing all those kinds of things and help members make an informed decision. When you got hired to do your job, you knew what you were going to get paid. So too should a member know if they're taking a part-time job for 15, 20 hours a week. Here's the wage. Here's what's going to happen to the food stamps or your SSI. What's going to be your net take-home pay? And then make a decision. Do you want to take this job or not? So there's no surprises. There's no, I didn't know this was going to happen or whatever. So we work a lot with our members in that regard for when they're returning back to work. So it isn't something they need to be just right off the top, family members or or well-intentioned care home operators or members feeling like, God, I can't take a job. I'll lose my benefits no matter what. That's rarely the case.
Well, I love that you help them cut through the red tape, because the most, educated people in the world, you'll call an organization and I'll go to our website, fill out the forms. And I mean, it can be daunting and understanding. And if something's filled out incorrectly, whether it's student loans or, like you said, all the benefits, disability, medical insurance, if you fill things out they're wrong, I mean, they'll be like, okay, you got to wait for 6 months, or like, yeah, it's overwhelming and daunting. I know I have a family member on Oahu, and he's been in the system now he has some mental illness and challenges, and he was in a hospital at one point, and he was going to be released, to your point, and he needed I was there visiting him, and they said, he needs to fill out these forms, and I kept saying, there is no way. He's so sick right now, and he's going to need help. And so the social workers or at the hospital, they put me in touch with someone. So we were corresponding, because they would help me follow through. Although in the end, what happened is that they were trying to reach out to him, and he wasn't responsive to their efforts, because he needed, it's just a process, and it's complicated. And when they're sick, they need a helping hand to they might start filling out a form, but having somebody like your agency or Clubhouse or people who can help navigate the bureaucratic nightmare it can become. I just love to hear that. Are there a lot of volunteer opportunities from people in the community with Clubhouse? I mean, I know that the people who participate in the programs, you said the work order day, but how about just in general? Like, if I live in Los Angeles, if there was a Clubhouse around me and I really like this organization, are there volunteer opportunities for people who are in the community?
Well, first off, I want to tell you there's a new Clubhouse developing in Hollywood. And
Oh.
so that's a new development. So I can, email you the contact information for that development. But the answer is yes. And so the way that volunteers get involved with Clubhouse, because there's kind of a balance where we don't want volunteers to take away the opportunities of leadership opportunities for members to get involved with taking on, the work and function of the Clubhouse. But a lot of volunteers may get involved as advisory board or board members. They might provide employment opportunities. They might help with driving on the evening, weekend, holiday programs. There might have a special niche. Say the Clubhouse had some members wanting to learn American Sign Language, and so somebody who was a volunteer knew how to do that and came in and helped people with that.
I love
And
that.
so what
that.
we try to balance is not having volunteers come in and do the work of the work order day that members could be involved with doing. So we've sometimes, where well-intentioned volunteers want to help with that, but we also want to always rely on the talent, skills of members to help members as well. And so say somebody's tutoring somebody else, so a member tutoring another member to help them get their GED or something like that. It's a win-win. It's a win for the member getting the help and support to get their GED, but it's also a win for the member who's doing that tutoring to feel good about helping somebody else and building friendships and rapport with other members. So Clubhouses will use volunteers, but they'll use them judiciously in specific areas where they need help with. So, and that's why it's just a balance of not usurping members from being in leadership opportunities, but where there's specific need that a Clubhouse has. I remember one Clubhouse had somebody who was really a horticulture expert, and they were looking to get a garden going. And this guy was retired, owned a landscaping company, was retired, and he volunteered for a few months just to come in and talk about the fertilizer and the soil and what would grow here and what would grow better in this part of the Clubhouse where they have these grounds. So he was really good in helping them launch their garden and how to maintain it and that sort of pH levels with the fertilizer, all that kind of stuff. And so there was a specific niche for that guy who, was retired, was looking to help and contribute, and it was a time limited kind of volunteer thing, but he really helped get the garden going at the Clubhouse. So there's another guy who at the Clubhouse that I used to work at, who is an accomplished musician. And this is such an interesting sidebar where he got he broke his back and ended up being in a wheelchair on a boogie boarding accident here on Kauai. And he was running a preschool, well accomplished member of the community, had this horrific accident, ended up being wheelchair bound, couldn't do the things that he used to do in his life. Ended up, he was a talented musician, and he would now play harmonica because he couldn't, play drums in in his condition. But the Clubhouse had formed a band, and he would come in and help with the various musicians at the Clubhouse, learn different tunes, go out in the community and play music at different, every month there's a festival that people, like a block party, and the Clubhouse band play down there. And this guy found a role for him and for the Clubhouse where he helped form the Clubhouse band. And so there's different things like that where there's a unique array of opportunities for volunteers, but each Clubhouse will have its own needs that way. So if somebody's interested in volunteering, they should just contact their local Clubhouse, get a tour, check it out, and see if they have any opportunities in that regard. There's a lot of different ways. My wife worked at a YWCA, and they had grounds that were really, no one was taking really good care of them. And they couldn't find somebody to do the work consistently. Well, I talked to her about our employment program. So she opened the door for me to talk to her boss, and boom, we were able to get a part-time job for one of our members. And those grounds never looked better when that guy started working there.
It's funny you mentioned that one guy earlier who didn't want to be too social, and but he could fix things. So I'm Mormon, and in our church, pretty much everybody gets what they call a calling, basically a job at some point, but it's usually very social. And my dad was such a private, introverted person, like he just dreaded that. He's a great dad. He just was not social. So at one point he got a calling to be the person who opens up the building and lock up the building and that kind of thing, security. And he loved it. It was perfect for him. He's one of these people who got up at 4, but like to your point, there's just something he loved that calling because he felt like he was still contributing, but he didn't have to do the chit chat social thing.
And people relied on him. They began to count on him. He was reliable. He had his own role and niche with that. And so that's a nice example of what happens with it. Just like you mentioned the Cheers one earlier, we don't serve alcohol in the Clubhouse, but that camaraderie, and you walk in the door and everybody knows who Norm is, or, the names of members, and how's it going? Celebrating birthdays, celebrating anniversaries. I think too, it takes a special kind of worker at a Clubhouse too, who can kind of hang their degree initials at the door. You're still going to use your skills with, if you have an MSW or a licensed clinician, whatever kind of special skills you have that you went to school for, but you're going to use them differently in a Clubhouse. You're still going to be a good listener. You're still going to be empathetic and draw upon all that, but you're also going to be cleaning the bathrooms at the Clubhouse with members. We got 50 people a day, but you need to keep the bathrooms clean. So somebody might feel like, I've been paid thousands of dollars to get my degree to clean a bathroom. That's not the real point here. Where the point is, you're building relationships with people. You're making sure the environment is really respectful for people. And you're also showing that there's nothing that you're going to ask somebody else to do that you won't do yourself. As a director of the Clubhouse, I always make sure that I still manage some employment placements, that I was involved in the evening weekend program. People knew my wife, they knew my kids, they knew my dog. It's traditional medical model boundaries when you don't share anybody your phone number, or they don't know where you live. At a Clubhouse, a lot of that stuff, folks knew where I lived, and my dog jog with some of the members and me, and just it's like it's a true kind of example of extended family. And that's why I think the model's effective. It impacts lives in a real concrete way of helping people reintegrate back through work, through school, through housing, through wellness, a lot of holistic kinds of ways. But the bigger overarching thing are those relationships, and people feeling like somebody cares about me and my life matters. I have something to offer, and somebody's finally asking me my opinion. I have skills and talents to contribute, and no one thinks I'm weird here. They accept me for who I am, and I have a sense of belonging to a community that respects me. And that's what you'll find in a Clubhouse community. And that's where people who work at a Clubhouse, we call them fire souls, people who have a fire in the belly, who end up going into this work and staying in it 30, 40 years because they feel like it's such a rewarding career to be a part of a community like this. I've been in it now, 35 years. And even though I used to get super excited and jazzed when somebody got their first paycheck, or we moved them into their own apartment for the first time, or we got a grant for a van and one of the members drove that new Toyota truck off the lot of the Toyota dealership. That I don't have those experiences now as an administrator with Clubhouse International, but when we write a grant, we get 5 new clubhouses in China. When we're working with a community that's just driven by family members who've had nothing but tough experiences with their loved ones, and they get a clubhouse in their community and they see their loved one thrive, that I've never gotten bored or jaded or tired of trying to be a little piece of helping make a difference for that family member and that member. And that happens with about 100,000 people and where we're at now, but we have so much more work to do. There's so many communities that don't have clubhouses, and that's part of what we need to continue to do and do better and make more public awareness. So having an opportunity to speak with you today is a welcomed opportunity by us, because we want people to know we don't want to be the best kept secret in mental health. We want people to know who we are, what we do. Come and see our clubhouses. Come talk to us at Clubhouse International, and we'd love to engage further with communities that want to try to get these types of community clubhouses for their cities and towns.
Well, we're just parting thoughts here. I'll try to keep it, let you get back to your day. But I'm so grateful, and we love to do it as well. We love to profile great organizations. I just think it's a great organization. I learned so much about your programs and your services, and we hope to have you back. Thank you so much. If there's anything if we can do for you, reach out, please. And like I said, if we get on TV, this would be an in-person interview, and it sounds like you travel a lot, but we'll either come. I wouldn't mind a trip to Kauai to interview you in person.
I'd be glad to do it. The last thing I'd like to say, it isn't just, we have so many other organizations. We've been an evidence-based practice through SAMHSA, the American Psychiatric Association, the World Health Organization, the Global Mental Health, the Lancet Journal. Other organizations have identified the Clubhouse. You talked about Ken Duckworth's book. So other organizations are also espousing the credibility and the good work of Clubhouse International. And so we have lots of research showing the efficacy of our clubhouses, but also organizations that have talked about the value of Clubhouse International and how this model not only changes lives, but saves lives. So any opportunity that we can have to talk further about this with communities, we're more than interested, Janice. So thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you and talk to your listeners today.
All right. Well, have a great holiday season, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and maybe I'll see you in Kauai.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us for another episode of American Mood Swings, where we talk about the brain and all things mental health. Hope to see you next week, and please share with your friends.